But I want to thank you all for joining today for a discussion about job offers, which I think is a really exciting topic, especially for those of you who are just getting started in the Canadian or the Albertan workforce. So I think we should just move straight into the program, and we'll have, like Ronnie said, we'll have time for questions at the end. To say again, I am a human resources advisor. So I've worked with writing and negotiating job offers for most of my career. And I've also worked with helping people find work. But during the question period, hopefully I'll have some insight for you, but I'm also not a lawyer. So if there are legal questions that I don't have the answer to, I'll be able to point you in the right direction. So first of all, I'm just going to take a minute, and Ronnie, if you could enable me to share my screen again, seeing as I logged out and back in.
I actually have you as being able to share your screen.
I'm just getting a host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, let me try again then.
The joys of Zoom presentations.
Back with us, Michelle?
I'm still here. Can you see me?
Yes. Are you able to screen share now?
Looks like that will work. So I'm going to share, and I'm going to head to the slideshow to the very beginning. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes, we sure can. Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I did put together a short agenda. Actually, before I get started, I wanted to ask Ronnie to interrupt me if there's any point in the presentation today where I start talking too fast. I sometimes have that tendency, and I'm happy to be interrupted. So that's going to be your job, Ronnie, if you don't mind, for the next 40 minutes.
Absolutely.
So, great. Today we want to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about a topic about two different parts of a typical job offer. We're going to talk about the things that are legally required, and then we're going to talk about the things that are optional but are really nice to have. And then we'll talk in detail about a legal document. I'll try not to make it boring. And it's called the Alberta Employment Standards Code. And I'll explain it. And we'll also talk about why it's really important for workers in Alberta to know the Alberta Employment Standards. Then we're going to spend some time talking about temporary and permanent and contract positions. And then after all that, we'll walk through the information that you will want to see in your job offer before you accept it. So next slide. When reviewing your job offer, every job offer is going to have two parts. First, there will be parts of the job offer that your employer is legally required to provide you. These things are defined by our province in a document that I referred to called the Alberta Employment Standards Code. And I'll probably say those words 20 times this morning. So I hope I don't trip on it too much. Second, your job offer will include things about your job that aren't legally required, but they're really nice things. And sometimes we call those the perks of the job. And they are optional offerings that set your company apart from other companies. Maybe the employer has a remote work policy that allows you to work at home. Maybe they provide flex days that give you extra time off. The next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the common optional, what we call nice to have workplace benefits. So know that employers don't have to provide benefit plans, but many companies do, and each plan is different. And some things in benefit plans that your employer might provide for you and pay for include insurance coverage. So things like life or accident or disability insurance programs that provide ongoing salary if an employee gets hurt and can't work, or if an employee dies, life insurance program will provide payments. And so it's important to know with insurance plans through companies that they're often cheap. They cost very little to the employee. So if it's available and a program at your workplace, it's important to try and participate. And then we'll talk about extended healthcare benefit plans. And just as a bit of a background, you might all know that Canada has a universal healthcare system, which means that we don't have to pay for many healthcare services. So I can visit my doctor, for example, or I can spend time in a hospital, and I don't necessarily have to pay for those services. But there are, which is a great system to live within. But there are health services that aren't paid for by the government. If you visit a dentist, for example, you have to pay for that. And if you buy eyeglasses, you have to pay for that. If you need medication or drugs due to condition, you'll have to pay for that. And so company extended healthcare benefits help pay for those services that aren't covered by the universal healthcare system in Canada. And those company paid benefits provide coverage for both employees and employee family members. So they can be very helpful financially. And that are less common, they are called savings plans. That helps employees participate in a savings plan. And you put $5 per paycheck into your savings plan. Your employer will also contribute $5 to your savings plan. So you can see financial standpoint. If you work for a company that has a savings plan and it's offered and participate, I highly recommend that you try to participate in any savings plan. So that's a bit of a summary of the nice to have but optional employer benefits that might exist in your next workplace. So once again, we call them the perks of the job. But what I want to talk about now are some of the really important things that your employer must provide, actually a legal requirement, and this are outlined in the Alberta Employment Standards Code. And it is a document that's available for you to read online. And I've provided a link in the slides later on in the presentation. But what I want to talk about are some of the really important parts of Alberta Employment Standards that we should all be familiar with. So first of all, minimum wage. These numbers
I'm sorry, it looks like Michelle is having some technical issues here. We'll just hang on for a moment and see if she can rejoin us. Michelle, are you back with us yet?
So you see on the left of my slide, employees can legally work a maximum of 12 hours per day, unless by exception, if something unforeseen or unexpected has happened in the workplace. But also, employees must be given breaks during their workday. So we all should have a time to rest during our work. If your shift is 5 hours or less, you're not entitled to a break. But if you work between 5 and 10 hours in a day, you must get at least one 30-minute break. And if you work more than 10 hours in a day, you must get at least two 30-minute breaks. So sometimes things happen in our workday when breaks just can't be provided. Maybe there's been an accident at the workplace, or maybe something really unexpected happened, or maybe you work alone and a break can't be provided because we can't shut the store down for you to have a break. But if an employee can't take a break during the workday, then they must be paid for the break that they didn't have. So if you work 8 hours in a day and you didn't get your 30-minute break, you should be paid for 8 hours and 30 minutes. Those are the hours of work rules in Alberta. So whether you're a full-time, a temporary, or a casual employee, you should receive vacation. And after 1 year of working in your job, you should get vacation time. And vacation is calculated based on your length of time in your job, and it's tied to your anniversary date, which is the anniversary date is the date that you started working for that employer. So the table that I've built on this slide describes the amount of vacation that you get based on how long you've worked for that employer. And as the work year continues, you get a bit more vacation with each pay cycle that is completed. What's important to know about vacation is that if you leave your job and you haven't used your vacation, your employer must pay you for the hours that you've earned in vacation but you haven't used. Next, we'll talk about statutory holidays. So in Alberta, we have 9 statutory or general holidays for which employers must provide time off with pay to their employees. And these are all the days, I've listed them on the slide, that are mandatory statutory holidays. You will hear people refer to these days as stat holidays or even just stats. And we also have...
Sorry, Michelle, I don't mean to interrupt you. Your slide didn't advance the way that it should have. It seems like it's frozen. We're still on the overtime pay in Alberta slide.
Okay. Is it moving now?
No, I think you might have to turn it off and then reshare. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I'll come back and stop sharing. Share my screen again. What do you see? Legal vacation entitlement?
We see a black surface saying that you've started screen sharing, but nothing is showing up.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing again. Share screen. I'm going to share. And it's still black?
Still black. I have a copy of your PowerPoint. Why don't
Yeah,
I try sharing it? It'll
Yeah,
just take
sure.
me a moment. So carry on, and I will.
I'm going to stop sharing. I'll come back.
Or it'll just take me a minute to find it.
Yeah. I can't remember what slide Ronnie said we got stuck on, but know that all of the slides that I'm working with today, we will be able to send out for you to review. Lots of the slides have a lot of words on them, and so probably best to be able to read them at your own speed after the presentation anyway, but hopefully we can fix this glitch or this mistake in the slide sharing and get back on the program. I might also just turn off my video, Ronnie, and see if that helps as well.
Okay, sounds good. Baffled as to why I can't find this piece here. Let me just try one more time. If you would like to carry on, I know that it's so helpful having the slides, but I will, oh, do you know what? Michelle has
Come up
started.
again?
Well,
I tried one more time.
It looks like you're trying, but it's not coming up.
Okay, yeah, I tried one more time and with my camera off, so.
Okay, well, I will try again here. Let's see what we can do.
I see the screens. I see the slides, Ronnie.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's skip through. This is where we got stuck, is the overtime pay in Alberta.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, should I cover off this hours of work rules again with the information in front of us?
I'll just leave it up for just a second for folks to check in on, and then we'll rely on later access to the PowerPoints.
Yeah. So take a read of what I have been referring to, and we'll click through these slides slowly so you can take a read. And then when we catch up to where I was,
legal vacation entitlement.
Yep. And I think this is where I was talking.
I think so too. So I'm going to mute, and I'm going to do the best to advance the slides in the proper way. Please let me know what you need if I'm not quite getting it correct.
Yeah, I'll just give you the go ahead when it's time to advance. So as I was saying, and sorry for the technical difficulties, but these are our mandatory holidays in Canada, and employers need to provide these days off with pay. We also have 3 optional statutory holidays, and those are Boxing Day, which is December 26th, and Easter Monday, which is the day after Easter Sunday, and what we call Heritage Day, which is the first Monday in August. And so those are all the days in Alberta that are defined as statutory holidays. You can move the slide ahead. So there are conditions in order to qualify for stat holiday pay. And I've outlined those conditions on the slide. So just take a second to read what those conditions are. The other thing that's important to note is if you work on a statutory holiday, perhaps you work in a restaurant or you work in a hotel, and those businesses stay open on stat holidays, you must be paid overtime of at least 1.5 times your average daily wage. So that's the topic of statutory holidays in Alberta. We'll move forward one more slide because I want to talk a little bit about commission pay. I'll just wait for the slide to move. There we go. Commission pay is a topic that I want to cover off because it is a little bit different than standard pay. And first of all, commission is a pay structure that pays you according to the amount of work that gets done. So maybe it's a percentage of the sales that you make in a furniture store, if that's where you work. And it's a very common pay structure in the sales sector, but we also see it in other places. And so what's important to know is that commission pay can be calculated as a weekly minimum, not an hourly minimum. So weekly minimum wage for commission employees is $598. But the important thing is, even if you've earned zero commission in a pay cycle, your employer must still pay you at least $598 per week. So you might be working in a job where they say you're on 100% commission. You're not really 100% commission because you're still entitled to your weekly minimum wage. We'll move the slide forward again, Ronnie. The other part of commission to understand is a thing called the draw, which is basically a payment made to you for future commissions that you're going to earn. It's a bit like a loan that your employer gives you that you pay back from your future earnings. And the one thing I want to highlight about commission draw is that your employer can legally take back that draw money, but not if it means that you earn less than minimum wage. So you still are entitled to that weekly $598 as a minimum. All right, next slide. If you work in a restaurant or in a hotel, you may be receiving tips for the service that you provide. And I guess the important thing to know about tips is that they are not covered by the Alberta Employment Standards Code, and every employer can manage tips and distribute them, give them back to employees as they want. And so I want to believe that most businesses in Alberta are fair and ethical, and they distribute tips fairly. But there are situations where tips are not managed well. And so it's important to ask your employer, first of all, if you're eligible to receive tips, and secondly, how they distribute tips when you're considering a job offer in the hospitality industry. Okay, next slide. Those are a lot of the employment standard highlights that I wanted to talk about. Now I want to talk about payroll deductions when you're starting a new job. So when we talk about employment income, and when we look at the salary that is outlined in our job offer, what we see is what we call gross income, which means income before tax deductions. Your employer must legally take off taxes from each paycheck you receive and give that money to the federal and provincial governments. You will have tax deductions for federal employment tax, for provincial employment tax, for a contribution to the Canadian pension plan, and for employment insurance premiums. So what you need to remember is that your pay that goes into your bank account will be less than what is indicated on your job offer. And next slide, Ronnie. And before we get into the specific deduction amounts, I did want to highlight that there are certain things that employers are not allowed to deduct from your paycheck. First of all, you cannot be charged for your uniform costs. You cannot be charged for errors in the workplace that cost the business money. You cannot be charged for cash shortages or a loss of property. So if you work in a restaurant and someone comes in, eats, and then leaves without paying, your employer cannot deduct that meal cost from your pay. If you work in a gas station and someone fills up their car and then leaves without paying, you cannot be charged for that business loss. If you break glasses in a restaurant, you cannot be charged for that breakage. So those are things that are not allowed to be deducted from an employee's paycheck. On the next slide, I've built a table as an example of what standard deductions look like on one pay cycle. So this is an imaginary employee who earns $1,500 every 2 weeks. And so on the table, I've added 4% as a vacation pay. So they're going to get an extra $60, but then their federal tax deduction will be $131.74 taken off their pay. The provincial tax deduction will be $71.27 removed from their pay. The Canadian pension plan deduction will be $77.68. And then the employment insurance deduction is $24.65. So this person's job offer indicated that they would be receiving $1,500 every 2 weeks. But in fact, the pay that lands in their bank account, which we call net pay, will be $1,254.66. So we all need to build our annual financial plan off of net or after tax numbers and not gross or before tax numbers. This table that I used is actually a tool from the federal government, and I've provided a link to this tool at the back of the slide deck. And you will be, when you get a new job, it's very easy to go into this tool and you input your gross before tax income, and it will calculate all of your tax deductions. So even before you start working, you're going to know, I already know what my gross salary is, but what I really want to know is what is landing in my bank account every 2 weeks. And so that's a great tool to use as you start a new job. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 in the workplace. As we know, when we have COVID-19, we can't go to work. We need to stay home and self-isolate. So because of that, the federal government has created 3 COVID-19 programs that allow employees to be away from work and have their jobs protected. First of all, the COVID-19 leave is for employees who are required to stay home and self-isolate because of COVID-19 exposure. This is an unpaid leave, but federal income support is currently available. That may change in the future, but I've provided the link for you to read about that. We have a COVID-19 vaccination leave. And this is a paid and job protected leave that allows employees to leave the workplace for up to 3 consecutive hours to go and get their vaccine. And then we have a personal and family responsibility leave, which is put in place if you are an employee who needs to care for someone who is at home due to COVID-19. That is an unpaid leave, but federal support is currently available, and I've got the same link included in that. So those are really important leaves to keep in mind so that our jobs are protected, but we can follow the protocols around COVID-19 and manage the pandemic. All right, we're all completed with the Alberta Employment Standards. Maybe that's the boring part of the presentation. But now I've outlined on this slide 3 pretty typical types of employer-employee relationships that you're going to see in Alberta. And each is a little bit different, but each one has its own positive aspects. So first of all, we see a lot of temporary work in our provincial workforce. And temporary work has a start date and an end date. That's what we mean by a fixed term. And as a temporary employee, you've agreed on an hourly or a daily rate. You're entitled to holiday pay for the time that you're in this temporary role, and the employer must take taxes off of your pay and give them to the provincial and federal government. For permanent work, this is an employment contract that doesn't have an end date. You have a start date and it's open-ended. When we talk about health benefits and insurance benefits, typically it's permanent employees who have access to those drug and dental and life insurance benefits. And once again, the employer must deduct your taxes and send them to the government. Now, in the contract world, you will know that you're in a contract arrangement with another company because you will have created your own company. And it's a work agreement between an employer company and your company. So you'll have gone through a process to incorporate or to become a sole proprietor, and you have your own company. In that situation, the employer company does not deduct taxes. And it's the responsibility of the contractor to save and send their taxes to the government at the end of the year. So when you are contracting, it's important to plan for your tax bill that will be waiting for you at the end of the year. The next slide, I've highlighted some of the benefits of each of these types of jobs. And I think it's important to stay open and consider all of these jobs because they do each have their positive points. Temporary employment, you've maybe signed up at a temp agency in Calgary, so you know what temporary work looks like through an agency, and they're short-term sometimes, but you can experience many different work environments in the temp employment world, and that allows you to get a feel for what work environment works best for you. The other great thing about temporary employment is that you're going to meet a lot of people, and it will allow you to build a network of people you know in the Calgary workplace. Next, the benefits of permanent work. Obviously, the obvious one is that benefit packages that I talked about earlier in the presentation are typically exist for permanent employees. The other thing to keep in mind is that formal leadership, like manager and supervisor roles, and promotions, so the ability to move up in a company, usually remain within the permanent workforce. And then when it comes to contract work, there is lots of flexibility regarding timelines and pay rates with contract work. And for what we call entrepreneurs, people who own their own businesses, this is an excellent avenue to build that private business and to be your own boss. So lots of positives in each of these types of employment. So be sure to just keep an open mind and consider all of the different types of work that are available to you. So with all that info, we're going to move to the next slide. And now you're looking at your job offer. So with that job offer, what are the things you should really know? What are the questions you should have answers to before you accept that job? First of all, job title. So what is the job title that you will be accepting? And even better, is there a written description of your job so that you know very clearly what the job tasks are and what's expected of you? Secondly, reporting structure. Who do you report to? So who is your manager or your supervisor? And will that person approve your hours and approve overtime? Does that person build the work schedule and approve vacation when you need it? And is that the person that I will go to talk about problems or issues that I might be having in the workplace? So reporting structure is who you report to and what they are responsible for. 3, start date and length of employment term. So when can I start? And how long will this job last? That's important. It's important from a planning perspective for you. Number 4, permanent, temporary, or contract. So what type of employment agreement am I considering? And with that, will the employer be taking taxes off of my pay and sending them to the government? It's important to be clear on who's doing that. 5, rate of pay and pay deposit cycle or method. So how much money will I be paid? And what is the pay schedule? So will I get paid every other Friday? Will I get paid the 15th and the 30th of the month? Every company is required to have a regular pay schedule. So ask what it is so you can plan your other bills around when you get paid. Your employer will ask for your banking details. They'll want your bank name and your account number, and that's standard information to give to your future employer so that they can deposit your pay. 6, vacation pay and vacation entitlement. So am I receiving vacation benefits? And if so, how many vacation days do I get? What I talked about on the vacation slide was the provincial minimum, but many companies offer more vacation than the minimum requirement. So you might get 3 weeks of vacation, for example, instead of the 2-week minimum. Number 7, benefits. So do you have a company insurance or an extended health benefit plan? And if you do I qualify? And is there someone in your company who can walk me through the details and explain it to me so that I can enroll in that program as soon as possible? And don't be surprised if the new employer has a large package of workplace documents, legal documents for you to sign. There might be a drug and alcohol policy that puts an agreement in place between employer and employee that drugs and alcohol are not allowed in the workplace. They might have an electronic communications policy that outlines how employees can use computers and cell phones in the workplace. Read these documents, but know that they're very standard documents in the Canadian and the Albertan workforce. So, yep, Ronnie, you can move the slide forward. Those were most of the slides that I wanted to cover off with you. What I have here are the links that I've been referring to. The payroll deduction calculator is the tool that will allow you to input your gross income, and the tool will calculate your net income. Alberta Employment Standards publications, if you click on that link, there is a document for every work sector in the province. So if you work in construction, there will be an employment standard document for construction. If you work in hospitality, there will be another document. I've just put the link to the general publications section, and then you can find the document that is appropriate for you. And then the Employment Standards Guide for employees is just a summary of much of the information that I've shared with you today. So it's a good summary document if you don't want to flip through all these slides again. And then the COVID-19 information just outlines the 3 leaves that are in place through the federal government for the balance of the pandemic. So I hopefully you will get all of your questions answered through the job offer process. You'll be happy with the answers and you'll be ready to start work. But I think what I wanted to finish off by saying is that Canada needs workers like you. And I know that finding a job can be difficult. It can be a frustrating process, particularly when you hear in the news that there's a shortage of workers and still it's hard to find jobs. But I just hope that you keep looking and keep doing the hard work of job searching. And I'm confident that the job will come. And I hope that once you've found that perfect job, some of the information that I've shared today will be helpful as you get to know your new workplace. So thanks for spending time with me today and being patient through our technical challenges. Ronnie, you can probably stop sharing the slides now, and maybe we can turn our videos back on.
Terrific. Thank you, Michelle. That was so informative and and beautifully paced. I know you were worried about that as well. We really appreciate all the information that you've shared. And to remind everyone, recording and the slides will be available on the CLIP site. I hope the recording came through the way it needs to with the technical issues that we had, but please know the slides are there for sure. Michelle, we have a couple of questions that have come through in chat. If you're okay for me to ask them for you,
That'd be great.
So one of the questions is about commission. Does the commission amount extend to under 18, or is the weekly rate only for full-time folks over 18?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a commission document in the link. The Alberta Employment Standards publications section of that slide has a link specifically for commission pay. And I don't think that document outlines or differentiates between over 18 and under 18. So I guess the question is, should a youth be earning commission? And probably the best official answer for that, and I should have mentioned this in the presentation, is that the Alberta Employment Standards has a contact center for employees. And so read through the commission document. I don't think it differentiates between adults and youth. And so then make a call to the contact center and they can clarify if there is a difference from on commission pay between youth and adults.
Terrific. Thank you, Michelle. Someone asked, how is the amount of these deductions decided? Is there a specific amount or percentage that's used?
Yeah, there is. There's a standard percentage. I didn't talk percentages because the percentage tax deduction changes with the amount of money you earn. So you sit at a certain tax rate under a certain pay, and then you arrive at the next pay grade and your tax rates increase. So we have 3 or 4 different tax brackets, we call them in Canada. And so probably the easiest way to define your tax rate is to use that payroll calculator, because with each, and when you go to the federal government site, it will show you what those tax bracket earning changes are. So so that you'll know when you move into a higher tax bracket. And basically, the more money you earn, the percentage tax that you pay gets a little higher.
Thank you, Michelle. We have another question. If I didn't get a written job offer, I only got a phone call offering me a job, I didn't get much details, should I ask for a written letter?
Yeah, you should. It's great to get something written. There's probably, if you got a verbal job offer, maybe someone called you up and offered you a job and outlined the salary without much other detail, it's probably because they aren't in the habit of writing formal job offers, and that's okay. But as an employee who wants to be informed and protect yourself, what I would recommend is that you email that employer back. And first of all, thank them for the opportunity to work with them. But then say, I do have some questions about the job, and they are as follows, and outline questions that cover off the topics that we discussed on that job offer, understanding your job offer slide at the end of the presentation. Hopefully they'll respond to your email, and then you have something written that can act as your employment agreement. So it is important to have something in writing. If you do have any even small issues in the workplace, you have something written to look back on and make reference to. I have a daughter who's 21 who is working in retail, and she had exactly that. She had a phone call after an interview, and the employer said, "Hey, we like you. We'd like to offer you the job. Here's your hourly rate." And that's all the information she had. And she got excited and accepted it. And 3 months later, there are lots of questions that she has about, hey, why don't I get a break during my workday? And things like that, that she could have gotten clarification on in a simple email. So an email exchange can act as your employment agreement.
Terrific, thank you. Someone else has another question about deductions. If someone is working part-time, will the deduction be the same or will it change?
Your deduction, you'll be able to plug your pay into the tool, and it will calculate your deduction based on that exact amount. So It's not going to be based on the number of hours that you work. It's going to be based on the income you've earned during that pay cycle.
Terrific. Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. Is it a good idea to negotiate your job offer?
Yeah, I think I think negotiating a job offer is a good idea if there's a valid reason to negotiate it. So we are not a negotiating culture generally in Canada. We go to the car dealership typically, and they've got a price posted on the car, and if we like it, we typically pay the price that's posted. So negotiating isn't commonplace in Canada, but when it comes to your job offer, look at what they're offering you. And if it feels like a fair offer for the job they're asking you to do, don't negotiate it just for the sake of a negotiation experience. But if you've seen other jobs posted and the salary for a similar job at another company is higher than what they've offered you, and you have a valid reason to support that, then by all means, go back to the employer. Once again, thank them for the opportunity to work with them and indicate that I've done my research and I feel that a higher hourly rate would be justified for this role based on the homework that you've done, and send that question back to them. The worst case scenario is they'll say no. But I guess I would just guide people, don't negotiate if really what you're looking at is a fair job offer.
Sounds good. One of our participants reflects that especially women have negotiate substantially less than men do on average.
Mm-hmm.
And so there may be some gender differences. A good thing for our female participants to think about is there an opportunity to do as you've said and reflect on whether the job offer is fair and marketable?
Yeah. Now it's absolutely. Sometimes it's hard to get access to that income information, and usually you're most successful in negotiating a job offer before you've accepted it. But unfortunately, sometimes you don't have information about pay inequity or unfairness between genders in the workplace until you've started a job, maybe made friends with some of the existing employees, and realize that your pay is behind the male employee who's doing the exact same job. And so once you have that information, bring it forward. Bring it forward to human resources, copy your supervisor, because that's sometimes information that takes a bit of time to understand, and it should be flagged because that needs to be corrected in the Canadian market.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Michelle. That concludes our session for today. We've posted a couple times a link to a survey that will give us some feedback on this session. Our goal is to make sure that we meet the needs of the folks that we're trying to reach through this opportunity to learn about financial well-being. And if you're able to give us that feedback, it'll be great. We think it'll take you about 3 minutes to fill out the survey, but it might even be quicker than that. So if you wouldn't mind following that link, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Michelle, for a very informative and lots of food for thought, and for addressing our questions so wonderfully. It was lovely spending the morning with you. Letting our participants know that there are 2 other session times this afternoon at 11:30 and 1:30, and there are options for you at each of those times. So we hope that we'll see many of you again for a later session today. And again, thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Nice to connect with you all via Zoom. Bye-bye.